Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm in church, and you picked a great day to come hang out with our family and here at New Dawn. So I just want to make a quick announcement, a quick plug for what's coming up on the 17th. It is Father's Day. That's right. That's it. That's all I've got. No, we love Mother's Day, but we love Father's Day as well. We don't discriminate right here. We love on dads, and we're going to have a great time. But also, the 17th, that Sunday, is the day that we're kicking off our summer series. It's called Gone Fishing. Appropriate. Not all dads fish, but some do. And it's like you think dads. Why do people think fishing when they think dads? I don't know. I enjoy fishing, but our series is called Gone Fishing. It's our summer series. You don't want to miss it. We're going to have a great time, and it'll be for the few weeks of summer that we have left. I feel like we just got out of school or getting out of school, and it's time to go back to school already. Pretty soon, we'll have like a week off. And back when I was a kid, you ever said that? I say that a lot these days. It was like 3 months of summer, wasn't it? Am I making that up, or did I just remember it wrong? See, we had all summer off. These days, it's shorter and shorter and shorter. That's the problem with culture right there. That has nothing to do with what I was announcing, but you can follow me. Anyway, 17th, make sure you're here. You don't want to miss our summer series, Gone Fishing. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a great time. Pastor Rudy is back in action, so he's going to hit it hard that day, and he's going to do an awesome job. And so I look forward to that. So I want to talk this week, and if you will allow me, I want to invite you for a moment to imagine. Imagine for a second what it's like to live in a Miami that God intends. Let me phrase that. Imagine what God imagines for Miami. How does God dream about our city? What does God have in mind for our city when it relates to New Dawn Church, to you and me, to our church? What are God's dreams for Miami? Are you thinking? Are you imagining? Maybe you got to close your eyes for a second. Whatever you got to do. What does God imagine for our city? Not too long ago, we got together with all of our volunteers and leaders in the new building over there, just to kind of have a good time, kind of pray over some stuff and cast some vision and just see what God was doing. And God began to chart a new course for our church. You see, we've been on this journey for quite some time with this building. And if you've been here a while, you understand that we've been hustling, we've been struggling, we've been going hard and fighting this for a long time, and we're almost there. But at the beginning, somewhere throughout this process, if we're not careful, we can miss the dream, right? Originally, when we started the campaign, our slogan was fulfilling the dream. Anybody remember back then, fulfilling the dream? No? Everybody's new since then? That's amazing. Anyway, fulfilling the dream, and here's what I said to a group full of 130, 140 some odd volunteers that were gathered that night. I said, I think we have gotten the wrong dream. I think we have the wrong dream. And then I went on to share some vision about our city. Do you remember what we said? And I told you a new dream. How many of you remember that? It was a number. And I put a number out there and I said 1,620,000. 1,620,000. That is approximately the number of people in Miami-Dade County that do not attend any church whatsoever. Almost 2 million people. That's a large city by any account, 2 million people. But within Miami-Dade County and surrounding areas, almost 2 million people unchurched, don't go to any church whatsoever. I said, that is the dream. That's the paradigm shift. You see, if that's the dream, if the building is the dream, once we're done with the building, then the dream's over, right? Dream fulfilled, we're done. But we're only getting started. And so the dream that I believe God has for our church, as it goes to our city, is to have an eternal impact on our city. There is no coincidence. I believe this from the bottom of my heart. There's no coincidence that God has placed New Dawn Church in this location, in this moment in time, for no other reason than to impact and reach our city. And so the task at hand is daunting sometimes. It's big. It's big. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's no one else's responsibility. It's not the other church's responsibility. It's not the bigger church's responsibility. It's not other Christians' responsibility. I see it as our responsibility. God has called us to this. He has placed us here. He's called us to this. And so God's dreams for Miami is that New Dawn Church would get out and infiltrate and show this city and this community what it looks like to love for real. What God's love looks like on a practical, one-on-one, face-to-face, relational basis. And when all is said and done, I believe that God's dream for our church is to do things through our church that none of us have even considered as possible. No one has imagined, you cannot imagine what God can do. Now, there is a way to do this. There is a way to accomplish this. There is a way to see God's dream for Miami realized and come true. It's doable. It's doable. And I want to talk about that way today, if you'll let me. There is one way, with one thing, that you got to do. And the one thing that is required so that we can see God's dream realized in our city is in one word: obedience. Obedience. Not just obedience, but it's going to take more than regular obedience. It's going to take bold, audacious, reckless even obedience. Reckless obedience. You have no idea what God will do through only one act of bold obedience. You can't imagine what God is capable of if you just do one act of bold obedience. And you'll see what God can do. You have no idea what He will do through you with just one act of bold obedience. Years ago when I was in college in Missouri, we used to go to this lake, and the Ozark Mountains is beautiful, beautiful country. If you've ever been up there, you should go see it. This huge lake called Table Rock Lake, and we would go during the summers, and they have there's these mountains, and it's just gorgeous. But there's one area where there was these cliffs, rocks, rock edges of different heights. And so we'd go cliff diving. Right, and the first time I ever went, it was 4 or 5 of us guys, and we were just daring each other. Hey, we're all gung-ho, just 19 years old, ready to rock and roll. And so we're going to do this. They had 3-foot cliffs, 10-foot, 40, 50-foot, like a bunch of. And so we're going to do this, and none of us understood. I mean, I've jumped in 10 feet before, probably, but we get there, and we're deciding, we're going to do this. We're going to jump. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have a good time. And when we stand up there on that 40-foot, 50-foot cliff and look down, it got real quick. You understand? If you ever look down a cliff, at least 50-foot cliff, straight down like that, a sheer rock cliff, it's a lot higher than it sounds when you describe just 50 feet. And so we started low. We avoided the 3-foot because there was a 5-year-old kid jumping off the 3-foot. So yeah, that just looked crazy. But, 3 feet. So we went to the 10, 15 feet, something like that. I forget what it is. But we start jumping off there and slowly work our way back up. And once I got to about 40 feet, I'm having second thoughts. I'm not gonna tell my buddies this because I'm not gonna be the only one not jumping off a 40-foot cliff. And oh yeah, you could do it. Oh, I dare you. And of course, when your friends dare you to do something, what are you supposed to do? You do it right away, right? That's what you teach your kids, isn't it? And so we did a 50-foot cliff, and we did it. And we're like, yeah, I got this. Well, we said, well, what else can we jump off of? Well, right close to us, there was a bridge that went over the lake, and the bridge was about 65, 70 feet. We're like, well, there's the bridge, right? Have you ever jumped off of something that's 60, 70 feet high? It hurts. It hurts. And so we ended up getting up there, and I did end up jumping, but I may or may not have said some things that I'm going to have to give account to Holy God for. Like he may put me in hell for a few weeks just as a punishment for that before I get into heaven. I don't know. It was scary. It was scary. We ended up tying a rope on the bridge and just swinging off into the. It was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome. Stupid, and don't try it at home. But it was fun. It was fun for a 19-year-old kid, and it required something of me. It required something of me. Motivated by something completely different than what I'm talking about today, but it required bold action. When I say bold, what is the first thing you think of? Bold. Talk to me. Daring. Somebody said something here. Fearless. Yeah. What else? Bold. Bold. Audacious. It motivated by sheer stupidity, it required boldness on our part. It's taking action without considering or without giving thought to consequences. Now, boldness can be a good thing, and boldness in my circumstance in that particular situation could be something stupid, right? Because it can go really wrong, and if you belly flop from 70 feet, it's not pretty, all right? Bad things happen, but bold obedience is the one thing that is required for God to intervene supernaturally and see his dream realized in our city. Now we say we're for Miami. It's written on all the walls. We're for Miami. Hashtag for Miami. We're for love and life, purpose and hope, forgiveness and acceptance, right? We're for people, family, community. We're for Miami. But the only way that God is going to really take over this city is if we are willing to take a step of bold obedience to what he's called us to do. So I want to talk about bold obedience today. You with me? Say, oh yeah. That's what I thought. Bold obedience. Go with me to the book of Acts in the New Testament. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Acts comes after those. If you've hit the maps, you've gone too far. Acts chapter 5. Acts narrates the story of the first century church. Okay? Right after Jesus goes into heaven, Holy Spirit comes down out of heaven, and the church, the first church, starts their ministry, right? They take, on the day of Pentecost, they go to the temple, start preaching. More than 3,000 people come to Christ on that one day, and thousands are added to them every day. I mean, they keep going, they keep praying, they keep preaching, they keep getting together, and the church is exploding in the city of Jerusalem, not too long after Jesus goes into heaven. And so that's what's going on in the book of Acts. And it so happens that right off the bat, this raises tons of red flags for the Pharisees, the religious leaders of that day. This presents a problem for them because the whole city is in unrest and uproar. Did you see what's going on? Did you hear? Yeah, my cousin got healed. This is crazy. God, Jesus. They just had finished killing off this Jesus guy and got rid of him. And now he's more famous than ever. Everywhere you go, people are talking about him. Everywhere they're having a hard time justifying because so many things are being done in his name. God gave the apostles power to heal the sick, cast out demons. I mean, crazy stuff is going on. And the name of Jesus is spreading like wildfire. And the Pharisees don't know what's going on because this message that Jesus brought, remember, it countered the law, went far beyond the expectation of the law. And so it's making the religious leaders of the day look really stupid. And so they are trying to put a stop to this because they know that if they don't put a stop to this quick, Rome is going to step in and take all the authority they have. And so they're taking action. The Sadducees, the Pharisees, the religious leaders of that time, they're going to do something about it. So they start arresting the apostles. They arrest them, put them in prison. Not much they could do. They flogged them, let them go. And so we're going to pick up the story in Acts chapter 5. Let's start reading verse 17. It says this: Then the high priest and all of his associates, who were members of the party of the Sadducees, which is like a sect, a religious Jewish sect of that time, were filled with jealousy. Verse 18, they arrested the apostles and put them in the public jail. But during the night, an angel of the Lord opened the door of the jail and brought them out. Go, stand in the temple courts, he said, and tell the people the full message of this new life. Bold obedience. Bold obedience. I'm going to give you 3 thoughts on bold obedience, and then we're going to go home and eat lunch. Yes? You with me? So if you're taking notes, also if you got your phone or your device, whatever, Android or Apple, you can go download our app, and our notes are right there. Follow along. Or if you're taking notes, 3 things when it comes to bold obedience that you need to know and need to consider when you're going to obey boldly. Number 1, when it comes to bold obedience, you will usually trigger opposition. When you act in bold obedience, you're going to trigger opposition. It means you're going to have troubles. You're going to be opposed. When you finally decide to do the right thing, you make the decision to take a stand, to act in obedience to what God has led you and called you to do, you're going to have opposition. Well, we started off strong, didn't we? Already lost half people. We're like, I'm out. Verse 18 says, they arrested the apostles and put them in the public jail. Now, what you got to know is this was the second time that the apostles had been arrested within a couple of weeks' time. Twice. Not only they were arrested twice, they were arrested twice for doing the same exact thing in the same exact place. So, suffice it to say, the apostles probably weren't having a great day. Getting arrested for the second time just for doing what God had told them to do. They've gotten arrested. I don't know about you. I have not been arrested for teaching or for, telling somebody about Jesus or for doing anything that I'm supposed to be doing. Have you ever gotten arrested for doing what you're supposed to be doing? All right. That's the type of opposition you don't expect to have. When you do what you're supposed to do, what is the reward? Right. It works out. Like, you reap the benefit of doing what's right. And so when you face opposition, it goes against our natural human instinct. And so we start trying to rationalize what's going on. Why is it that so many Christians today, we like to associate Christ with comfort or comfort with Christ? You notice that? Some churches go as far as to preach on it. Like the reason why you're not having the comforts that you deserve or that God intends because you lack faith. The reason you have opposition is because there's unresolved issues. You need to repent of something. You got sin in your life. And so God's not blessing you, right? And that may be true to some extent. But we go as far as to say, listen, if you're doing the right thing, then God is going to bless you. And we associate blessing with comfort, don't we? We do. We just is natural, right? And isn't it why a lot of people go to church anyway? Because they feel comfortable there. I know for sure some people have left church because they feel uncomfortable. Hopefully not here so much, but But when it comes to God, for many Christians, it's God equals comfort, which by default means that, opposition is equal to Satan, right? If God equals comfort, then Satan equals discomfort, or opposition. And so what happens is it ends up leading Christians into a place of, well, if this is from God, then why are we facing so much opposition? Have you ever thought that? Have you ever found yourself in that place where you think, surely this can't be right. I mean, we wouldn't be facing this much opposition if this was from God. I've thought that. Honestly, I have. I've thought it. I've said, surely this cannot be right. Surely God's going to give us a break, right? Throw us a bone at some point. I mean, is it all uphill? Surely God's trying to shut us down. And at what point, at some point you start thinking, well, how do you know whether it's God stopping you or it's your enemy opposing you? So I don't, Be careful when you start to associate comfort with Christ. Be careful. Because they don't always go hand in hand. And plus, the Bible just simply doesn't teach that. It just doesn't. I'm sorry, I know that's harsh for somebody maybe right now, but when you take steps of bold obedience to follow God, you're going to face some opposition. You're going to face opposition. I would go as far as to say this, and this is going to sting a little bit, but I feel like I need to say it. If you're not ready to face opposition for your obedience, you're probably not ready to be used by God. I'm going to say it again. It stings, but if you'll receive it, it'll change it. It'll change your life. If you're not ready to face opposition for your obedience to God, then you may not be ready to be used by God. Because if you decide to take that step of bold obedience to do what God has called you to do, you're going to face some opposition. You're going to face opposition. World changers face the most opposition. Difference makers face the most opposition. As a matter of fact, every significant thing that has ever been accomplished was met with much opposition. Every battle that is worth being won faces opposition. So why then would it be different if you take on an enemy and you decide to do something bold on behalf of God, to obey what God has led you to do? You can expect that you have an enemy that wants to shut you down. You're not making him happy, right? I would say be careful if you stop seeing opposition in your life. That may be a time to get worried. If you stop having so much opposition for being a Christian or for doing what God wants you to do. If your enemy has no reason to oppose you, it might just be because you don't pose a threat. And that's scary. So yeah, you know what? It is possible to come to church, and pay your dues and, put a little in the offering when it comes by and, hey, I'm doing my part. I'm obeying. Why should I? My kids shouldn't be getting sick. I shouldn't have health issues. I obeyed. I paid, I'm good with God. I come to church every now and then and I do my part and I'm obeying. I should be getting straight A's. Well, if you'd studied, you'd get straight A's. But I shouldn't have relational problems. Argentina should not lose in the World Cup. Come on, somebody. It's not fair. It's what it is, not fair. I'm serving God. God, can't you just, I don't know, man. It's not fair. It's not fair. I hear that a lot in my house these days. I have 3 young children, and it could be for any number of reasons. But anytime someone does not receive something that someone else receives, it's not fair. It's not fair. We live in a world of fairness, right? We are so afraid in this culture to do something that's not fair. Not fair. I could have just bought one of my daughters a 3-pound bucket of Menchie's ice cream, frozen yogurt with gummy bears and worms and Skittles and chocolate and syrup, and they will have just finished it, and then I can give my other one a $1 cone from McDonald's, and this one will be like, hey, that's not fair. I didn't get McDonald's. Fairness is relative, isn't it? And yet as Christians, we fall into the same trap sometimes. It's not fair. Why? Because at some point, somehow, we start associating comfort with Christ. Like if God is okay with me, if God's blessing me, then I'm going to be comfortable and I'm not going to have opposition. When in reality, only the people who are willing to obey, only the people who are willing to not obey are the ones who don't face opposition, because you don't pose a threat to your enemy. So you will face opposition. Number 2, if you obey boldly, it often releases God's miracles. It releases God's miracles. Listen to verse 19. It says, but during the night, an angel of the Lord opened the doors of the jail and brought them out. It's funny to me, when you read this passage, and I read it at the beginning, did you notice that there's no pomp and circumstance when Luke is talking about the angel? Like, he didn't even make a big deal out of it. Like, if you didn't know any better, you just read right past it. You're like, oh, okay, it's just an angel. Are you kidding me right now? Okay, if I'm in jail and an angel shows up on the scene and just open the door, what? No, hold on just a second. Like an angel up, angel, sing. There is like 9 feet tall. I don't know. I've never seen an angel in real life, but like I'm in my head, there's glowing, right? An angel shows up and unlocks and picks the lock. I don't know. Maybe he just switched the bar. I don't know. Maybe he made me like jelly and I just went through the bars. I don't know, but it was crazy and supernatural. It was 100% supernatural. God worked a miracle, and the guys, it's almost as if it didn't even surprise them. Did you notice? Yeah, there was like this angel. He came, unlocked the door, and Peter and Jeff was like, "Oh, excuse me, thanks, but hey, we'll see you next week, right?" Like, what? No, they're not even shocked about this angel. It's just almost they expected it. It doesn't seem like it was par for the course, right? Well, we're doing what God asked, so God's going to take care of the details. That's their attitude. We're obeying. I mean, so we got put in prison. Oh, big whoop. God's going to show up. He's going to do something. Oh, there it is. An angel. Have you ever prayed something that was just crazy and then just you were completely floored and shocked that God actually did it? Like it caught you completely off guard because you didn't expect at all that God was going to do it? It's like kids, right? When kids believe something, their conviction is unshakable, isn't it? I mean, they are all in. You can, and they expect it too. Like they will change their life view. Their worldview will hinge on their conviction about whatever. They believe in it, and you're not going to tell them any different. So if your kids believe in Santa, guess what? Santa's going to show up. We're not having it any other way. They don't doubt it for a second, right? It's just obviously, hello. I mean, I sent him a letter, right? It makes sense. But I guarantee you, even if you wrote, you help your kid, yeah, let's write Santa a letter. Hey, Santa, dear Santa, I want such and such and such. And you mail it to the North Pole. I guarantee you as a parent, if a fat guy in a red coat and a beard walks into your house in the middle of the night, it will freak you out. Because you didn't really think he was going to show up, did you? You didn't believe. But it's obvious, right? I mean, he's Santa. He shows up. You write him a letter, he brings you toys. It makes sense. That's their approach to God and this angel. Like, obviously, it makes sense. You see, when you walk in obedience to God, you shouldn't be surprised at the miracles of God. Let me say it again. When you decide to boldly walk in obedience to God, don't be surprised at God's miracles. Don't be surprised when God shows up on the scene and acts on your behalf after you have obeyed Him boldly. Because He will. He will. This is His show. And when you decide to take a step of faith and act boldly, fearlessly, abandoned, not considering the repercussions or the consequences. If God asked it, I'm going for it. And God's going to have to take care of the rest. Guess what He'll do? He'll take care of the rest. Every time. Every time. Leads us to number 3. Acting in bold obedience always requires faith. Always requires faith. Verse 20 says, the angel says to them, go, stand in the temple courts, he said, and tell the people the full message of this life. What life? The life that they were preaching and teaching. The life that Jesus had offered them. This new life that Jesus had come to give. And that all of Jerusalem was being contacted with and just impacted with. This new radical message. Let me get this straight, Angel. Just so we're clear, you want us to go back to the place where we were arrested twice and continue to do the thing that got us arrested twice. Are we clear? Yeah, exactly right. Okay. The angel, God, is telling them to go back to where they got arrested and do what got them arrested. Again. Obeying boldly is not easy. And obeying boldly may not make logical sense to you at that moment. You might not have all the details. As a matter of fact, when God puts a calling on your life, whatever the case may be, chances are there's not a lot of details. When it comes to details, and God don't want the details. He's probably like, you can't handle the details. God takes care of the details. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be detailed and you shouldn't plan. You absolutely should. Whenever you can, you should. You should prepare as best you can with the details you do have, with the information. But sometimes there comes a point of bold obedience when you just have to step out in faith, knowing who it is that called you and believing that the one who called you is going to take care of it. And you know what He'll do? He'll take care of it every single time. Every time. So I don't know what God may be laying on your heart, what bold step that you need to take, what bold obedience you need to act on today. Maybe it's opening a circle. That could be daunting for some people. Man, it's scary. It doesn't make sense. I don't have the capacity. I feel like I can't communicate very well. I don't know. I don't have a thing with, I'm just not good at that kind of thing. My house isn't very big or whatever, but I feel like God is leading our family to do this. Maybe you got to step out and let God handle the details. He will. Maybe your bold step of obedience is to start tithing. That's an important one. That's a big one. And when you step out boldly, guess what? You're going to have opposition. And it takes faith. And you don't have the details. But listen, I've done the math, I've done the numbers, and I have too much month left at the end of my money. You understand what I'm saying? Like I physically cannot tithe. I can't tithe on continuation. Listen to what I'm saying to you. If God is the one who has asked you to tithe and called you to tithe, which He has all of us, God is the one who will take care of the details. That sounds reckless. It does, doesn't it? It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Let me tell you something right now. Let me tell you something. You want to see a miracle in your life faster than any other way? Start tithing. And you watch what God does in your life and with your money. Just watch. It's that simple. Is it easy? No way it's easy. And it's hard. And it's just, I can't believe I'm doing this. It feels so irresponsible. God is the one who said it. And it takes faith. But if He's the one who asked it, then the miracle's coming from Him. And it's guaranteed. I'm not guaranteeing it. God guaranteed it. Trust me. Trust me. Test me, He even says. So that may be your bold step of obedience that you need to start doing. And you can start seeing God working in your life in that area. It's a big one. Because our heart is attached, it's wired to our wallet, man. Our heart is, it's chains locked down to our wallet. And where our wallet goes, there's our heart. You want to know where somebody's heart is? Follow the money. They'll tell you real quick what they believe in, what they like, where their convictions are. Jesus knew that. But Jesus also knows that if you're willing to trust Him in something so important to us like money, then He'll show you stuff you never imagined you would see. He'll show you things you didn't think were possible in your finances. If you're willing to obey Him boldly. That's a bold step. Maybe your bold step is to seek reconciliation with somebody that you've been putting off and avoiding. Like stuff's just not right in somebody's life. And you need to obey God. You need to step out and you need to go to that person and you need to make it right. You need to settle it once and for all. Maybe your bold obedience is to go ask her on a date once and for all. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't know where you're at. What's your bold step? Whatever it is. It requires faith. But God will act on your behalf. And you will see His hand moving in your life in a supernatural way. God didn't give him the details, just gave him the one thing. Verse 21 says this, at daybreak they entered the temple as they had been told. As they had been told. It's funny to me, it's interesting how when the angel told them what God wanted them to do, you notice their reaction? As they had been told, they began to teach the people. I see two reactions to this call of God. When God tells them to do, the apostles tells them to do something, here's their reactions. Number one, they did not delay. They didn't wait. You see that? They're like, okay, but it's been a rough week, so, maybe we can I just need to sleep for a day. I need to eat a good meal, whatever. Any excuse would have been okay. Understandable in my mind, right? The other reaction is that they did not do it partially. Partially. Think about it. Knowing that they were going right back to the place where they had been arrested twice to do the same thing, there may be some apprehension, some hesitation on their part at this point, right? So, okay, maybe if we go to the sidewalk of the temple, not in the temple. I'm technically in the temple, right? Here. But if you're a parent, what do you know? Here's what you know if you're a parent. You know what you know? You know that delayed obedience is what? Disobedience. Partial obedience is what? Disobedience. And why do you know that as a parent? Why do you believe that? Do you know why you believe that? Maybe you don't. Why is delayed obedience disobedience? Why, when you say something, you need for your kids to obey you right now? Because you know what's best for them, right? They always don't, and they almost never don't at that point. And you are trying to do what's best for them. Sometimes their life depends on it, doesn't it? The ball goes into the street. They're running out into the street. You see a car coming, but they don't. Stop! Their life depends on their reaction to you, doesn't it? On whether or not they choose to obey you immediately. It changes everything. Delayed obedience is disobedience. Your life depends on it. Partial obedience is disobedience. God wants all of you. And you never know when God is calling you to do something, your life just might depend on it. Your future or your ministry just might depend on it. Don't wait. Don't wait. When you obey God immediately and obey Him completely. That's what the apostles did. They obeyed immediately and they obeyed completely. Immediately. Say immediately. Completely. Listen to what happens in verse 28. This is the same guys of the Sadducees and Pharisees. They caught him again. Go figure, a third time. And they say, we gave you strict orders not to teach in this name. Which name? The name of Jesus. He said, yet you have filled Jerusalem with your teaching and are determined to make us guilty of this man's blood. Yeah, by the way, because the previous verses, Peter called these guys out and said, by the way, you're guilty of crucifying Jesus, to boot. He said, we gave you strict instructions not to do this. And listen to Peter's reaction, verse 29. He says, Peter and the other disciples replied, we must obey God rather than men. We must obey God rather than men. What we're doing, this calling, is bigger than us. It's bigger than us. We have no choice. We wouldn't want it any other way. God has called us to do this. And we are witnessing a move of God, miracles, as we speak. We must obey God rather than men. That statement seems really, really simple and really rudimentary. But at the core of it, how many times do we delay obeying God because of men or women? How many times do we put off? Do we delay obeying God because of what seems rational, what seems logical? And then at the end, this is my favorite part. A guy steps in, a Pharisee by the name of Gamaliel, and he says this in verse 35. He says, men of Israel, kind of reminds me of William Wallace, right? No? Sons of Scotland. No? No. Google it. Verse 35, men of Israel, consider carefully what you intend to do with these men. Some time ago, Thaddeus appeared, claiming to be somebody. Apparently some guy showed up on the scene and said he was a big deal. And about 400 men rallied to him. Well, he was killed. All of his followers were dispersed. And it all came to nothing. After him, Judas the Galilean appeared on the scene and the days after the census and led a band of people in revolt. Well, he too was killed, and all of his followers were scattered. Therefore, in the present case, I advise you, leave these men alone. Let them go. For if their purpose or activity is of human origin, listen, it will fail. Listen to the prophecy that this guy speaks. This is not a Jesus follower, by the way. And listen to what he says. But if it is from God, you will not be able to stop these men. What? That's awesome. That's awesome. If this is from God, you can't shut it down. You can't stop it. You can't stop these men. And you'll find yourself just battling against God. If it's from God, you can't stop it. Turn to your neighbor and say, you can't stop it. If it's from God, if God is the one calling you, you can't stop it. You can't stop the move of God. You can't stop someone who has boldly decided to obey God. They cannot be stopped. You want to be unstoppable? There you go. You have to decide. Draw a line in the sand. All right. Where do I stand? What am I going to do? Am I okay? Am I okay being mildly comfortable? Which probably means I'm useless to the cause of Christ if I'm comfortable on a continual basis. If you're comfortable and that's where just you right there, you're just vanilla right there. Chances are you'll end up being useless to the kingdom. Because you're not ready. You're not ready to face opposition. But if you're ready, and you're tired, and you want more, and you believe God has called you to more, and guess what? He has. He has called you to more. Then it's time for you to take that step across. Boldly obey. Recklessly. Against all odds. Despite what others may say or think or tell you. Fearlessly. Abandoned. Obey God. I don't know it doesn't matter. Take the step. If you're willing to do that, God will work on your behalf and show you things you never imagined possible. And guess what? You will be unstoppable. You'll be unstoppable. You know what kind of church is an unstoppable church? It's a church that's filled with people who are willing to go so far above their capacity and capabilities to let God do something through them and in them that is way more than they could ever imagine. An unstoppable church is a church that's willing to say, you know what? I don't know the how just yet, but we're going for it. This is bigger than us, but it's not bigger than God. And God has called us to this. Are you ready for that? I can't say it. We can do a rally. Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do this. Yeah, maybe. But listen, this is not an anthem type battle cry. This is serious. This is life altering. This changes the course of your history. This changes the course of your family's future. This could change the course of your life, and it will. But I don't know about you. I don't want to find myself in 20 years in the same spot going, well, at least I've been comfy. I want God to use me to do something crazy, unheard of for His kingdom. Don't you? I want to leave a mark. Don't you? I want my kids to have that legacy. I want my kids to do the same thing. I want them to obey boldly, with disregard of anything else, just because God said it, God called me. I'm doing it. I don't care how crazy it sounds. Let God handle the details. Are you ready for that kind of obedience? God's dream for our city is attainable in our generation. And I'm not talking about taking a city, because our church is God's, but guess what? Miami is God's already. So I don't say let's go claim the city. I say let's reclaim the city. Let's take what already belongs to God. The city has yet to see what a move of God looks like from a group of people who are recklessly abandoned to do anything and everything that God has called them to do. It's supernatural. It's big. But I want to be a part of that. Would you pray with me? Heavenly